is every time there's a trade, say you go into your brokerage account and you buy 10 shares of Apple stock, the brokerage company theoretically is supposed to buy those shares, put them in your name, exchange the contracts, exchange ownership, and put the money in their account. And so you've got a clean transaction. And that's all done by the DTCC. Well, they're not doing that anymore. They're saying, hey, you brokerage houses, just come to us when you can net out every few days. So you do whatever you want while you got the shares and your customers, and then every few days give us an accounting of where you are, and we won't even watch it, which is insane. So now basically the fox is guarding the hen house. The fox is the hen house.
Hey friends, Sean from SGT Report here. Thanks so much for tuning in to this content which YouTube deems harmful to my viewers, so much so that they demonetized my channel 2 weeks ago. So I'm very grateful to have sponsors that want to reach you guys directly, like this one, the Fighter Flare flashlight. During a pandemic that goes global, it's not a bad idea to stock up on essentials, and if the lights go out, you'll want to have the Fighter Flare flashlight. The 6-in-1 Fighter Flare flashlight comes with a 3000 mAh solar-powered recharging battery, 800 lumen LED, high-low beam light, emergency strobe light, compass, wire and rope cutter, emergency glass-breaking hammer, and a high-powered military-grade magnet. The Fighter Flare flashlight is the perfect addition to your household and cars, but limited supplies last, so act now to get 20% off the new 2020 model before they sell out. Take advantage now. Use promo code SGT20 to save 20%. Visit fighterflare.com. I'll leave the link below. Hey friends, welcome back. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is going to be an awesome call. I'm really gratified to have back on the line Bix Weir from Road to Ruta. And I'll tell you guys, this is a very serendipitous call. Bix and I just emailed each other today out of the blue. We set this thing up on the spot because Bix had asked if he could repost a video that we did, an interview we did 6 years ago to the day, which I just realized, Bix, it was 6 years ago to the day that you and I did that interview titled The Shocking Truth History Channel Can't Broadcast, May 26th, 2014. So I guess we're off by about a day depending on when I post this. But how serendipitous is that? 6 years ago, my friend.
It's amazing that, now a lot of people are starting to talk about it because there's some like woo-woo guys starting to talk about it, about the DTCC. But this has been known for decades. It's just people just don't get their hands or heads around that certificates held by your lovely powers that be in the banking system and the brokerage system, your 401k, are not being held properly, and they are being sold multiple times to multiple people. And the DTCC, that was 6 years ago that we talked about this.
Yeah. And
you would think they would have done something, but no, they haven't done anything about it. If anything, it's 50 times worse.
Exactly. And people don't even know the other name we mentioned in that interview, Seed and Company. So we'll get to that on this call, guys. First, I just want to give a shout out to Curious Me on Patreon, and I want to thank all of my patrons. I really do. Curious Me, he deleted this comment, but I still saw it via email. He said, "Not a fan of the big pharma stuff. I'm more of a sound money guy. Still, I'll take this over your more recent self-pity posts." And he deleted that. I thought that was funny because he was commenting, Bix, about my new interview with Judy Mikovits, which I think is very important, but I couldn't post it to my YouTube channel because YouTube has now explicitly stated anything that goes against WHO, World Health Organization guidelines regarding the coronavirus and vaccines will be removed. And I figured not only would they delete that interview, they'd give me another unwarranted strike. So I posted that interview exclusively to my Patreon page and to my Bitchute page, and that's worked out great. It's got thousands and thousands of views on both of those venues. So I think that's the way I have to go here in the future is I have to put the more challenging content up on Bitchute and Patreon because YouTube is run by fascists.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of people are saying, let's take out YouTube. Why don't we just take out the management of YouTube? The platform was built by the U.S. taxpayers because the CIA was deeply involved in the original YouTube founding. And then Google bought it, which the CIA was involved in investing in that too. So why don't we just take out the management, replace them with people who uphold the Constitution and let free speech reign, and then go from there instead of taking out the entire platform? Because the entire platform has so much reach and so much power. if used for good or bad. And unfortunately, the management of YouTube and Google, the owner, has a different agenda for humanity and a different agenda for America. And I think those are the people that need to be removed.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And as it relates to pity there in that comment, it's not self-pity to tell people that after 10 years as a YouTube partner in good standing, they demonetized your entire channel out of the blue. We've seen the same thing happen to so many others. Our friend Jay Snip, I think it just happened to him. Bix, you probably shouldn't even be talking to me because they'll be coming after you soon enough.
They come after me, trust me.
Yeah. Well, I've got this interesting, really important note, an email via Patreon from Allie, one of my patrons, and boy, did she break it down. For those who don't know, and I guess I didn't realize this, I should do a video about this. So they're coming after channels that are conservative in nature, Christian in nature, libertarian in nature. Pro-Trump channels are being demonetized by the dozens. And Allie pointed out to me all of this disturbing content, Bix, on YouTube that is still monetized. The drag kid stuff with Desmond and so many of these people preying on kids. Let me just give you a couple examples. A video from Jinx Monsoon called The Bacon Shake, a song featuring Desmond dancing on a bar in flapper garb while the grown-ups say she's shaking her bacon. Come on, boys, it sizzles. Her bacon is shaken.
Come on, everybody, it's fun! She's shaking her bacon. Come on, boys, it's sizzle. She's shaking her bacon. And then shimmy till it fizzles. Her bacon is shaking. Come on, it's nice and hot. Her bacon is shaking. I'm serving it ready or not.
Adults supporting this behavior from a minor, putting it on YouTube and getting it monetized. I just can't overstate the hypocrisy coming from YouTube, Bix. It's absolutely disgusting.
Well, you got to remember or learn where YouTube came from. That's the funny thing. You know, the story of three guys sitting together having dinner in 2006, coming up with the idea of YouTube was a complete lie. It is, as a matter of fact, the patent for YouTube was applied for and awarded back in 1999 by a guy named Mark Collins Rector, who is now a absolutely proven and spent jail time for being one of the biggest pedophiles known to mankind. And he started YouTube back in the late 1990s in Hollywood, right when the porn, kiddie porn really got its founding. I have no doubt that the deep state took that over and created something called YouTube. If you look at the patent by the guy named Mark Collins Rector, you will just be shocked. It is exactly what YouTube is, but it was filed in 1999.
Yeah, and what we're to believe, what we're told, is that I think the story goes something like this. Susan Wojcicki and Ann Wojcicki, the sisters, one of them was allowing these Google founders to work in their garage, one of whom was Sergey Brin. Ann Wojcicki, the head of 23andMe, married Sergey Brin, the founder of Google, and her sister, Susan Wojcicki, runs YouTube. That's what we're supposed to believe. It all happened organically. These people are all fascists. They're liberals that hate Christianity and conservative content, and this just all happened in a garage miraculously.
It's all a lie. It's all controlled by the deep state, 100%, and the pedophiles have their fingers all throughout the social media, and that's what we're trying to get rid of. So hopefully we can start making arrests and some of these people can go to jail.
All right, let's turn our attention to the Fed. Let's turn our attention to this DTCC story, if there's any breaking news there, and I think there is. I read an article and I posted it the other day, but this stuff goes down the memory hole so fast because everything's coming at us so fast, Bix, it's hard to keep up. The Fed now has a $7 trillion balance sheet as they print the currency. It's not money, it's currency, fiat dollars. Print the fiat dollars into existence at a rate heretofore never seen. It's just stunning. So comment on that, and then we should maybe talk precious metals and DTCC.
Yeah, I was keeping track of the Fed bailouts, not the official ones, but the kind of the behind-the-scenes ones through the repo market, the POMOs, the MBS. I was keeping track of that, and then there got to be so many that I couldn't keep track of them. We got up to $3.65 trillion in secret bailouts to the bank, and they've got to be so many I just can't keep track of them anymore. This is This, remember, in 2008, Hank Paulson had to come to Congress for a $700 billion bailout that Congress said no the first time around. This time, they didn't even go to Congress, and they've given away so far to the banksters $3.65 trillion, and that is climbing fast.
And people should know this. Most of our listeners do, Bix, but back in the day, banks actually had gold and silver in physical form in their vaults. And the paper money they were giving people were claims on that gold and silver, and it said so right on the notes, right? Redeemable in silver, redeemable in gold on demand. Not only do they not have any silver and gold in the vaults anymore, Bix, but now the Fed is telling these big banks, Wells Fargo and others, you don't need to have any cash reserves in your vault. Zero. That's how far gone this system is.
Absolutely. And to try to go into your bank and take out $10,000, they're going to look at you like you're crazy, even if you have like $1 million in your bank account. Basically, the banks they have control of everything. We have to bail them out because the embedded banking system into every aspect of our economic system is vital for every single thing. And that's the big problem, because they know how vital it is. You'd think after we bailed them out in 2008, they wouldn't make any of these crazy bets. No, not at all. JP Morgan continues to massively manipulate the silver and gold markets, continues to be on the hook by the DOJ now for that manipulation, but they are holding it above them, saying, hey, if you take us down, we'll take everything down. And that's where the war is right now.
And it may surprise people to know, those who aren't familiar with precious metals, anyone new to this broadcast, if you don't understand the importance of having some physical gold and physical silver, now's the time to get it because of all of this money printing. And Bix, they're not really even printing it. They're just creating it, ones and zeros on computers. And they're setting the prices of these assets wherever they want. I just read yesterday that the Fed is buying Hertz junk bonds. Hertz is declaring bankruptcy because of this manufactured crisis. And the Fed, it's insane. It's hard to keep up, Bix. And silver is so cheap right now that it feels cumbersome. Meaning you can buy a kilo of silver for $650 or so, and it's super heavy, and if you have too many of them, it becomes hard to store, when the opposite should be true. Silver should be so expensive right now in dollar terms that people could only buy it fractionally, thereby making it more valuable like gold. You see what I mean? It's so cheap right now that it's cumbersome to buy and store.
Well, we are getting to the end of the silver manipulation. Just had last week an article in Reuters that was literally written by the Department of Justice about how they're going to start taking out commodity riggers with their new tools. They have new computer analysis tools of how to rig markets. They're going to go into the past, into JP Morgan's past, and see how many times they rigged the market in the past, which is really finally the Department of Justice stepped into the commodity market, because it had been regulated by the CFTC, which was a really pathetic regulatory, I call it, they just have it for cover. They don't use it to regulate the commodity markets. They use it for cover so that the ridiculous manipulation can continue. But now we have the DOJ in there. They're saying they have these new tools. They basically put out a warning last week and said, don't you even try to rig any markets ever again. And meanwhile, the top 8 banks who are short on silver, over 95% of all the silver shorts are held by 8 banks, are completely sitting there naked without the ability to continue the rig job. So we'll see what happens this week, but we are literally coming down to days of getting your hands on this cheapest silver.
And it's getting more expensive by the day because the paper price being manipulated low, being, what is it right now, Bix? 17, something like that? But
yeah, some ridiculous like $17.
Yeah, but to even buy a kilo of silver, which used to be, 99 cents over spot, now even those kilo bars are $4 or $5 over spot. Silver Eagles I'm seeing at $6, $7 over spot. So we're starting to see the paper price, the fake price, and the physical real-world price separate, which should happen in a collapse. That's exactly what should happen until the paper price can no longer be manipulated.
But that's a problem with silver, especially as compared to gold. Silver really only has one place where people look to price, and that's on the COMEX futures and options. They don't really look at the LBMA because all the numbers are fake. The LBMA says they physically transfer over 100 billion ounces of silver every year, which is the dumbest thing ever. There's only been 600 million ounce or 600, what was it, 60 billion ounces ever mined in the history of mankind. And they're saying every year they transfer over 100 billion ounces. So we know that's a fake. And then, so the only place that there is a silver market is the COMEX. And that has been clearly shown to be a fraud. Even Bart Chilton came out before he was killed. I mean, he died, that the JP Morgan was rigging the silver market. And the reason they couldn't stop him was because it was a political decision. Since when is a political decision more important than the law? Since every day we live in this crappy matrix called the US/European control matrix of rigging the markets with computer programs. I think the Asia and China and everybody else is starting to see the fraud for what it is. The Fed is printing money. They print so much more money than they tell us about, too, behind the scenes. The whole thing is a confidence game, and every other country around the world, even our enemies, knows this. They know that when the truth is shown about what's going on, the United States is going to look pretty pathetic. But yeah, no one will trade with us because we rigged the system. That's kind of a good thing. We give us something to do for the next 10 years before we're allowed to trade in other markets around the world, because I do think we're going to see a freezing up of the commodity markets, the stock market, the bond market, everything freezing up because of the amount of fraud that's gone on.
You know, before we move on to the DTCC, just real quick, remind us about Bear Stearns. Remind us where their book went after they collapsed. And people might recall Jim Cramer banging the bell there on his CNBC show saying, buy, buy, buy. Bear Stearns is a buy 2 days before it collapsed down to $2. But I think Bear Stearns held the biggest short position of all the big criminal banks. But then when they collapsed, who got that book? Did that go to JP Morgan or did that go over to Deutsche Bank?
Of course it went to JP Morgan. JP Morgan, out of the good of their heart, was going to bail out Bear Stearns and buy the entire company for like $2 a share. And everybody's like, what are you talking about? You know, just a couple of weeks ago, this was over $100 share company. Why is it $2 a share today? It was a hit job on Bear Stearns. Now, Bear Stearns held the biggest short position in silver out of anybody. So this was entirely a silver short position thing. That's why JP Morgan had to go to the Fed and say, hey, we'll buy Bear Stearns, but you're going to have to guarantee $30 billion in losses. And that was all for silver. They ended up taking over the silver book. They ended up continuing to manipulate the silver price as per Bart Chilton, a CFTC commissioner. He said the only way that we could have taken down JP Morgan is if Barack Obama was not in the White House.
And do you think that JP Morgan has amassed the largest physical silver position in history? I think Ted Butler's research has suggested that's the case. I've heard others say, no, that's not actually what's going on at all. But what is your take on that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can tell from the data coming out of the CFTC, the warehouse data, the data coming out of the SLV ETF also shows that JP Morgan is the big taker of physical silver off both those exchanges. They were once an authorized participant in the Silver Eagle program, and that was found out, and then all of a sudden they hid that. So they were buying back when Silver Eagles were flying off the shelf at 40 or 50 million per year. JP Morgan was buying a whole bunch of those, and yes, they do have over 1 billion ounces of physical silver. And to put it into context, the Hunt brothers had about 110 million ounces. Warren Buffett got busted with 130 million ounces. And here's JP Morgan sitting with over 1 billion ounces in inventory while they were shorting the COMEX to keep the price low. So they were shorting the price to get the physical price very low, and then they were taking the physical. And now they've gone long the futures and options and are ready to make the biggest killing in the history of mankind when silver is allowed to trade freely. And there's a couple banks that are in deep trouble, including Citibank, HSBC, Scotiabank, and Deutsche Bank, and as well as BlackRock, the largest hedge fund out there. So there's a lot of fireworks coming down the pike in silver. And I think that's why there's so much news out of the DOJ about the investigations into commodities manipulation.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, if this was an ice cream sundae, this interview, let's put the cherry on top for folks right here with the DTCC. Now, you and I had a conversation on May 26th, 2014. I posted that to my YouTube channel. It was titled The Shocking Truth History Channel Can't Broadcast. If I remember, I'll link that below for you guys. Now, why today on Memorial Day, Bix, did you email me out of the blue saying, hey, do you mind if I repost that interview on my website? To which, of course, I replied, absolutely, go for it. And let's also have a follow-up conversation 6 years later. Why did you email me that about the DTCC?
But there's a lot more news coming out about it on the kind of through the Q movement, through this guy Robert David Steele, who's pretty big, ex-CIA guy, pretty big in the Q movement and things like that. And they're finally talking about the number one thing that allows market manipulation, and that is the fractionalization and rehypothecation of certificates of metal, meaning multiple owners of metal, multiple owners of stock certificates, multiple owners of treasury bills even. And that's the big one that has been added, is the banks have put together so many financial contortions on swapping and leasing and swaptions and derivatives on this and that. So many of these things we call assets, these pieces of paper we call assets, are just tools and implementation for manipulation. And they don't mean anything in the real world. And everybody said, stop, okay, deliver me my stock certificate of my Apple computer or my silver contract or my US Treasury bill. You're going to have multiple people for every single asset out there saying, no, that's mine. That's mine. I own those shares. You don't own those shares. And it's all done at the DTCC, which is the clearinghouse for all exchanges. The depository trust and clearinghouse. What they're supposed to do is every time there's a trade, say you go into your brokerage account and you buy 10 shares of Apple stock, the brokerage company theoretically is supposed to buy those shares, put them in your name, exchange the contracts, exchange ownership, and put the money in their account. And so you've got a clean transaction. And that's all done by the DTCC. Well, they're not doing that anymore. They're saying, hey, you brokerage houses, just come to us when you can net out every few days. So you do whatever you want while you got the shares and your customers, and then every few days give us an accounting of where you are, and we won't even watch it, which is insane. So now basically the fox is guarding the hen house. The fox is the hen house. And we've got massive amounts of problems, and a lot of those we're seeing with the repo market, because it wasn't necessarily a run on the banksters' banks. It was a lack of trust in the underlying assets that were being pledged as collateral, which were U.S. Treasury bills.
Do you want to drop a bomb on folks?
Which
Seed
one?
Company?
Oh, yeah. So when all the certificates, now even your mortgages here, mortgages are all put into a basket by the banks and turned into mortgage-backed securities. Everything, including stock certificates, bond certificates, metal certificates, you name it, your car, your mortgage, you name it, is put into the name of Seed and Company, CEDE. That is the beneficial owner of all this paper. So Seed and Company is the name. They call it the street name, but it is the legal. If the legal system stays together, they will own absolutely everything in the world that had any debt attached to it. So all the mortgages, all the stock certificates, all the bond certificates, everything is in the name of Seed and Company. And a real interesting thing about Seed and Company, it's a division or a subdivision of the DTCC, but there is an actual owner. And it was a human being that was an owner. In the 1970s, the U.S. Congress put together a group to go find out exactly who the Seed and Company was. And they didn't tell the people, but they came back saying it was a person. It was a person's name with the name. And it was like, I don't know who it was. It could have been the Queen of England. It could have been the Rothschilds or the Rockefellers or some ET race. Who knows what it was? But that was the U.S. Congress in the 70s. This thing is so big and so beyond our current worries of oh no, the government's this bad, or even this is beyond wars. This is the ownership of all of the assets on planet Earth. And that's in the name of seed and company. Of course, the militaries of each country and have to still be intact for them to collect on anything, because I don't know anybody, if seed and company, the evil people behind that, come out and say, okay, we own everything. I don't think they'll have the military power to stand up behind that. I don't care what the law says. Hell, they probably wrote the law. And that's kind of where we're coming to for humanity, is it's our time to say, take your assets back, reassert your sovereign right to control and hold all of your own assets. If you have anybody between your asset, I don't care what the asset is, you will lose it if these banks start going down, and it does look like they will be going down in 2020.
Well, here's the thing, Bix, and what people need to understand, because what you've just said is not new information to our longtime listeners, but it is brand new information for those who have no idea how corrupt this system is and has been and for how long. While you were talking, I typed in average daily volume of the Dow. All right, I'll show this right here. This seems impossible, but I want people to think about this. 541,143,809, what is that, shares? I mean, I just don't even know how to break all this down, but think about those shares settling at the end of every day. Are you kidding me? Do you think those certificates are going from one person's brokerage to another person's brokerage when settlement takes, what, 2 days or whatever it is, Bix? It's just insane.
Well, yeah, they call them, and the SEC actually knows all about it. There's about 200 million shares that don't settle every day, and they're called FTDs, failure to deliver. And who's the guy from Overstock.com? Patrick Byrne.
Yeah.
Patrick Byrne did an amazing analysis. He made it into a movie. I forgot the name of the movie, on the amount of shares that are just created out of nowhere and sold to people that have no backing. There is nothing there. So your brokerage house will sell you shares, and if nothing is settled, it's kind of like a musical chair thing. And that's how they destroy companies, especially startup companies. They'll just create trades out of the blue, like on the COMEX. I mean, every day on the COMEX, you look there and it's like, wait, 500 million ounces of physical silver has traded hands on the COMEX today, and yet there's only 800 million ounces that are ever mined from every mining company on planet Earth. How is it possible that all this silver is trading hands? It's not. It's all electronic blips traded back and forth to control and rig the prices. And that's how these banks continually make. You look at companies like, it used to be called EWT LLC, and it's now called Virtu Financial. Started by Bernie Madoff's buddy back in the day, a guy named Vincent Viola, who's also a deep state in the mafia, and the stock market go right hand in hand. As a matter of fact, Trump wanted to put him in charge of the Navy, which I don't understand at all, unless all this trading, criminal trading is going on out of the Navy offices. I have no idea. But it is so deep, it is so dark, and I think we called the video the dark, what was it? So Dark is the Con, is what I called my article on the DTCC. And yeah, the Hollywood part of it is, I drove down to Hollywood to do an interview for the History Channel on secret underground things, and I was going to talk about the DTCC vault at 55 Water Street in New York that mysteriously flooded during Hurricane Sandy. And I spent 3 hours down there talking to these guys, and they're like, oh my God, I got to get my money out of the bank. And then all of a sudden, the day of the airing, they cut the segment. And they said, nope. Higher ups told us that we're not going to play this. And I called my contact there, and he had been fired that day. Crazy.
Surprise. Yeah, so you sit down with them for 3 hours, and if you're lucky, they would have put in 90 seconds or 2 minutes of your comments on it. And they cut you out entirely?
They didn't even run the segment on 55 Water Street, which is the underwater vault that held $33 trillion worth of documents. And they didn't even run the segment.
Well, it is funny how this stuff goes down the memory hole to some extent. I do have a lot of good recall, but I knew that story firsthand from you because, again, you and I have been talking about this stuff for a decade, and that interview about Seed & Company and DTCC is now officially 6 years old. And I remember them inviting you on for that interview, and I remember them canceling it, and here I am asking you, what happened? Did they cut you out entirely? It's just funny, man. You and I have probably forgotten more than the average Joe will ever know.
And the amazing thing is nothing has changed. I mean, it feels like we're closer to the end of the manipulation and, taking out banksters and pedophiles and all the bad guys out there. It feels like we're closer, but I just hope, 10 years from now, things aren't, oh boy, we're really getting close now. We need to make a decision as a race, what kind of future we want to live in. And I think if people break the law so flagrantly like Obama right now, and they're finally saying, yeah, he broke the law, but we're not going to charge him. I'm like, why do we even have laws if you're not going to charge people who get caught breaking?
Well, that's right. That's absolutely right. So it didn't warm my heart to see A.G. Barr say that he doesn't necessarily expect to see any criminal indictments or investigations of Obama or Biden because they are merely guilty of an abuse of power, not necessarily rising to the level of a federal crime. And I do see a lot of comments from people who are still filled with so much hopium saying, hey, he didn't say there wouldn't be military tribunals. So I think we're all trying very hard to see the cup as half full. But until we see indictments and arrests of some of these deep state criminals, Bix, we're in a lot of trouble. And the banks are looting. I just don't know how else to say it. You can try to put a positive spin on it. But from my view, the banks and their cohorts in Congress are looting the Treasury.
Yes, and the gloves are off.
And the gloves are off.
They don't even put up the facade of trying to hide anything. They're not even, all this bailouts of the banks since 9/11/2019, the $3.6 trillion. They aren't even making up excuses for it. It's just flat out, we're going to give the banks this money, and you have nothing to say about it. And the big problem, the thing that is different for the DTCC from back when we did the interview and now, is that it is seeped into the bond market. And the bond market is the biggest market out there. That's the bond bubble is going to blow, and everybody's going to have multiple ownership shares. It's going to get just so ugly when it finally goes. And I think that's the end game, is to blow all the bond bubbles out there. I remember talking to you, I think it was last year, and we're talking about the everything bubble, where everything's in a bubble right now. It's crazy. And then now with all that has gone on in the past few months, everything has popped. And you just don't see it in the stock market because of the market rigging, and the commodity markets because of the market rigging. Mm-hmm. Everything now is about how much computer market rigging do we need to get to the next day.
Right. Well, Bix, I do appreciate your time. You know that. We've been friends for a long time, so thanks for hopping on here today in a moment's notice. And remind people how they can find you. You've got a very active YouTube channel.
Yeah, we're going crazy these days with some crypto stuff on Theta and on silver, the silver story. And it's been crazy and good fun and important, I think. Important things to talk about these days as it relates to our freedom and our breaking away from these criminal banksters that I still, I know I've been holding out this hope for a long time. I still think the good guys are beating the bad guys behind the scenes, and we're a hell of a lot closer to being free than we are of being locked up in FEMA camps.
Oh boy, I hope that's the case, my friend. It doesn't always feel that way. I mean, for those living in Michigan under the tyrannical rule of Gretchen Whitmer, or those in Illinois under Pritzker's tyrannical rule, it sure doesn't feel that way. But the good news is these tyrants are exposing them for who they are. They are absolute fascist globalist tyrants.
I agree, and keep up your good work, and I'll do what I do, and with all of us together, we'll get the message out, and we'll give it our best fight for our freedom. That's all we can do.
Amen. Guys, our guest has been Bix Weir, the website, roadtoruta.com, and I believe the YouTube channel is the same name, right, Bix?
Yep, Road to Ruta.
All right. Guys, thanks so much for listening. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for sharing this information far and wide within your sphere of influence. We really do appreciate it, and a special, sincere thank you to my patrons, keeping us in the fight for truth. All right, guys, God bless. Have a wonderful week ahead. Bye-bye.
yes, medicine shouldn't be political, and that's exactly what Dr. Fauci has done over the past 4 decades, is drive pandemics with an agenda that was based on conflicts of interest, in the millions, if not billions of dollars that he and Bill Gates have.